Good morning. I am Professor Linda Nelson Keene, FAIA, of the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and I'm here to share 5 years of sound walking Chicago waterways. I grew up playing in a river. I created my architectural thesis on 3 rivers, and I have worked for a series of years to connect people to the waterways and the land on which they live. For 5 years, working with college students, we have created a series of journeys to share with the public and also with K-12 students on the beauty and joys of living with water, second only to air. Now, I will do nothing but listening to the sound of the water, sounds of the city, and the sounds of our own health. I'll leave you with creative connections that can be made through this e-learning resource available on your phone, your iPad, and your computer. As architects, we interact with the world. Ecologists, we listen. Designers, we respond. And I ask you as people, do we really experience all that we should? So we'll start with sound is different than noise. On the left is Chicago's Noise and Vibration Control Ordinance. It's an ordinance of noise control. And on the right is how students see the urban sonic crisis and where it is leading us between the sustainability of human life and the sustainability of nature on Earth. In school, students are taught how the human hears, but how about teaching them how the non-human living entities hear and communicate as well? It's key to understanding health. So even just stopping in our optic world and getting people to close their eyes and listen is so wonderful. And we ask them to record the sounds in the places they live. They begin to assimilate decibel levels with certain sounds. And they also begin to separate sounds into biophonic, anthrophonic, geophonic, and sounds of people. Some of them go on and create a thesis of trying to create architecture that's more responsive to sounds of nature and more absorptive of unpleasant sounds in the city. We meet with biomimicry of Chicago's foundation director, and we listen to insects in the Lurie Flower Garden and to leaves and what they're trying to tell us. We also then listen to the city. It could be sounds in the river, sounds of cars on the bridge above, sounds of grass waving in the wind. Sounds of an unnatural sounds of the waves in the lake, and sounds of the city. And then they begin to think of the world we live in as a soundscape. And they see sound and hear sound like a painter reads a painting with a background, a midground, and a foreground, and intermittent sounds and sparkle sounds. And they begin to listen differently. And so they look at this blue inland sea and begin to think about it in direct relationship to the turn of the water of the faucet, or their shower, or their toilet. They begin to see the interconnections. They are surprised to find that 20% of the Earth's fresh water is right in that lake, or the series of Great Lakes, and that in fact 85 to 95% of the total United States freshwater resource is right there. And Chicagoans themselves use billions of gallons of lake water per day and don't give very much of it back. In fact, they're surprised to learn that Chicago is based on a gentle prairie stream full of abundance of biodiversity of life for the indigenous natives who first settled the area. But in the industrialized area, with the increase of rail lines and the Union stockyards, the river became toxic. It began to sicken the people with rotting carcasses, and actually the water intake had to be moved a mile out into the lake, 2 miles, and even at 4 miles, people were dying from infections from unhealthy water. Now when they look at this, we look at it and get the D+ grade of our water, which is a big improvement from the 1900s. And we realize that in the 1900s, we were reduced to about 1 species of fish as biodiversity, and now there are 76. But they really want to know more about water and how those Great Lakes and the fresh water needs to be protected and stewarded. And the areas around the world that don't have water that is so plentiful, and how nature filters water versus how humans need to filter it. Water equivalencies, how much water does it take to make a car, an apple, a gallon of apple juice, our jeans, and then how is water used all around the world? They're surprised that 3/4 are used for industrialized agriculture. So now they're back at the river with a new mindset, and they're looking at the relationship between the nature and the built environment. They make observations of life that they see and the health of that life. They look at materials, they look at activities, they look at experiences in between the bridges and along and above and below the waterways. They are thrilled to catch in these murky views on their GoPro underwater cameras the silhouette ghosts of fish. But they're most excited to hear the sound of the fish themselves. They go back to the water and start testing it for its temperature, its turbidity, its phosphates, and its nitrants and other pollutants, because they want to know that the water is fresh in Lake Michigan, that it is drinkable, after it's gone through the world's largest filtration system, the Stickney filtration plant. It takes 260 square miles and brings the sewage here, and in 8 hours, they go through a series of tanks that can clean the water and send it on down to St. Louis. It did take President Obama in 2011, though, to point out that they were not doing the final act of filtration. They were not disinfecting the water. They were just sending it down with bacteria in it. And so a lot has been learned. And that learning is translated to my students, where they begin to look at what nature does and what the built environment does today, which purifies air, restores water, grows its own food, takes care of its own waste, is quiet or is beautiful instead of loud and noisy. And they began to envision new ways of living in their city, perhaps by creating felted plants that will hang under the bridges, filter the water, will also dampen the noise and freshen the air. They take readings of all types of materials up and down the waterways. They meet with the Metropolitan Planning Council and learn about the great rivers, that after 5 years of surveying everyone in the city that they could, they want the rivers to be inviting, productive, and living by 2040. They realize they can help with this work. We connect with Dr. Leah Barkley and her amazing work that she's doing under rivers, and they build hydrophones. And we go anew onto the river with a steep learning curve, because we realize that as loud as the city is, that sound actually does enter into the water, and it travels 4 times more quickly underwater. And so that we've subjected our birds and our reptiles and our plants, our flora and fauna and fish to this sound. And so now the sound is not just annoying to us, but it's annoying to the health of our environment, which is our health directly related. So the students create a Chicago River data collection to begin to record sounds, people, activities, animals, plants, temperatures, using everyday technology. They expand their data collection with Chicago Public School students who come and help us during weekend summer workshops. And then the idea of a spectrum analyzer really shows what the water does to sound, what plants do to sound, what humans do to sound, and they began doing sound mappings. They realized that sound has quality. Some is pleasant and unpleasant. They're invited by Udo Knoll to contribute to the Aporee global radio Aporee map, and they begin to plot sounds of water. And in that course, they create a new attention to what the city sounds like. One summer, they start tracking all the fountains, starting, of course, with the Great Lakes fountain, and then trying to understand how plants and water together screen the sound of the city and give you a place of reprieve. They do a fountain walk and get so excited about it that they create a fountain map to encourage other people in the city to come and walk to these places of water, because people throughout civilizations have been drawn to water, to the well, to the lakefront, to the river. And if we can bring people to the water that we are sharing and then bring them to the lake and to the river, they will begin to connect to this great source of fresh water. They create an exhibit as part of the Chicago Architectural Biennial in 2016 to show what they're learning about water and how important it is to our life and to the life of everything on Earth. They promote water listening with scanned fountain signs and water listening and fish movies and diatoms and plankton and zooplankton movies. And they begin to show how we could regreen and build more infrastructure in Chicago on our roofs and on our ground. And they end up with the idea of starting eco cruises around the city. After sharing the exhibits at the Chicago River Congress in 20 and 21, developing a series of sound worksheets to share, they get back on the river in non-motorized boats and take more tests, more films, begin to create creative projects that bring other people to the river. They begin to assimilate a relationship with living things. And then we meet Hush City app founder, Dr. Antonella Radici. And we also use this wonderful resource to go around and find places in the city that we can relax and share that with other people. The students bring their proposals for interactive installations in the many empty bridge houses throughout the city, because it's all computerized now. They are empty, and they are a great resource for bringing the life of the water underwater above, and to bring facts and information about how humans as a civilization need to protect their water. So they make maps, they give workshops, they start eco cruises. This was our first one. They grew in popularity over the summer and the 2 subsequent years. We brought in professionals that know all about the flora and fauna of the Chicago region. So at a micro level, how stewardship of plants is important. And then the Cloud Atlas, a prelude to a plan author that's looking at the macro region of the Great Lakes watershed and all the movement of goods and people, so that we can bring all that data in as a Great Lakes Governor's Compact and make better decisions. We hear from the designer of the Riverwalk that really was instrumental in bringing people to the river, and then Friends of the Chicago River, who share all their initiatives, and from the Midwest Society of Acoustic Ecology that gives sound walks now. And then we introduce it to over 250 inner city youth through a series of workshops to engage a multi-generational public in water stewardship. I leave you with these resources and hope you will check them out, and hope that our work in Chicago will inspire your city to develop eco cruises, water workshops, and sound walks. Thank you very much.